Okay, here we go. We're hitting the road to shine a light on women who inspire us to be bolder and braver.
Leadership doesn't look one way. It's a giant rainbow.
You're not gonna break me down. You'll get worn out before I do.
Women who push us outside our comfort zone.
You got this.
And make us laugh.
I'm in deep Georgia, and they might have never met a Muslim.
Or they don't know they have.
Or they don't know they have because we walk among you.
You have a marriage that has been on public display since the beginning. You said the gutsiest thing you ever did was stay in your marriage.
That doesn't mean that's right for everybody.
To throw someone's life away when people really do make changes. I just believe in second chances.
My mother needed rehabilitation, not prison.
Your survival is your power.
Someone say to me, you're not good enough because you have melanin. How dare you?
I have a master's in whites. I just want whites to get a GED in blacks.
Every single person makes some impact on the planet every single day. We can choose what sort of difference we make.
Speak truth to power. When I throw rocks, I'm throwing them up.
We're gonna go by the house where we got married. This is where it all started.
And the rest is history.
Cheers.
By putting down the bad things and lifting up the good things, we bring balance to the world.
You literally become one with yourself.
I'm gonna live like I've never lived before.
You guys wanted to do something together? Like,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, so we wrote the Book of Gutsy Women together in 2019. And that really was something that felt quite organic to us because we had been, talking about stories of inspiring women. My mother and my grandmothers purposely had always kind of brought stories of inspiring women into my life. One of my earliest memories is my mom taking me to see Geraldine Ferraro. When she came to campaign in 1984. Of course it is, right? It feels like very cliche, but it's true. And going to see when I was a little girl, our mayor of Little Rock was a woman. So going to see Mayor Shackelford whenever we could. And so after I became a mom, we're starting to tell these stories to my children. And then we thought, we should write a book and share these stories. And then we had the chance to turn it into a docuseries, and understandably, Apple TV Plus said, there's a lot of women that aren't alive in the book. And if we're going to do a docuseries,
maybe they should have a pulse.
Yes,
exactly.
No seances. So we actually got to go on an unexpected, although slightly nerve-wracking, candidly, adventure to determine who we wanted to highlight, how we would do that, deciding that we would actually do the how by letting our guests decide kind of what activities we would share, because we didn't want to do kind of just interviews across a table. And so it had a sort of unexpected turn when we realized it couldn't be based on the book except for kind of in ethos. But it really wound up being such a wonderful experience.
It was so much fun.
Meet so many women who either we'd heard of but hadn't met, or we met but in a different context, or we had never heard of.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would just ask, how is it different doing this kind of interviewing and getting to know people as a producer or a host as opposed to a public figure or a politician? Is it different?
Sharon, it is so different. And I've learned so much because I've been interviewed, I don't know, a million times maybe. But I come in, sit in the chair, get interviewed, leave. I didn't know anything about everything around us, the lights and the sound and the cameras. And this was an amazing education for me because we were fortunate more than the usual interview because we could interview for an hour or two, even though maybe only 3 minutes were in the final episode. But just to see everything that went into it and to have the luxury of going deeper than just, okay, tell me who you are and what you've done, but why and where did you come from and what happened to you. I found it so exhilarating to be on that side. And then the whole post-production, putting it together and who was in and who was out and what we wanted to highlight. it was, I think, for both Chelsea and me, because we now have this, little production company called Hidden Light, it was such a great education. And then when something like In Her Hands, the story about the amazing Zarifa Ghaffari, the young mayor in Afghanistan, came our way, we could bring more to it as we were becoming a co-producer of that.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, and I'd like to hear from each of you, what's your take on the state of womanhood today in America? Right. Having interviewed all these amazing women, having experienced what you've experienced, you're a different generation, you're experiencing it differently, but still seeing the journey of your mom.
Yeah.
So let me ask you first.
Well, I think there is pushback against women's rights and opportunities and progress in our own country, but elsewhere in the world. There seems to be an extreme, obviously the Taliban, but there are many varieties, including what happened in the United States with the Supreme Court reversing Roe v. Wade and basically saying, no, the government will tell you what your choices are when it comes to motherhood and reproductive health. And that is such a huge step backwards. But there's also an undercurrent of misogyny and sexism that is now made much more public and sadly acceptable because of social media. So the women that we talked to, many of them are refusing to give in to that. They're standing up to hate, whether it be white supremacy or LGBTQ discrimination, whatever it might be. And they're trying to, in their own lives, be gutsy, but also gutsy on behalf of others. How do we lift each other up? And I think that we're going to need that more than ever. We need a lot more empathy and a lot more understanding and respect for the choices that women are making. And we need to fight back politically so that the space for women doesn't continue to narrow.
Chelsea, how do you experience it?
So, I certainly think that to be a woman in America now is to be political, because politicians have decided that they and not we should be making choices about our bodies and our agencies. And so I think we have to recognize that, and also recognize that, at least I believe, that we fight back not only at the ballot box, and I do think it is incredibly inspiring, though painful, of course, that we are seeing unprecedented numbers of women register to vote and turn out to vote in special elections, and yet we can't only fight at the ballot box or kind of through the political arena, because we see how the forces of darkness that want to kind of push our rights back, kind of push our opportunities back, kind of return back generations, are fighting on cultural fronts as well, fighting through schools, through social media, through religious organizations, churches, synagogues, temples. And so I think we have to stand up and make our voices heard anywhere and everywhere, because I think we don't want the books by Maya Angelou to disappear, and we don't want
that seems so absurd to even say.
That is true. Like there are efforts in Texas to remove all of the books by Maya Angelou. Right,
I mean, they just took To Kill a Mockingbird off of some.
It was one of the most important books I ever read.
Right, so we have to push back everywhere.
Some place just removed some version of the Diary of Anne Frank.
The Diary of Anne Frank, yes.
When are you running for office?
No plans to, and yet I think it is an important question. Why? Because at least for me, I think I can make the difference I want to make now through avenues like Gutsy, and also be the parent that I want to be to my 3 little kids.
She also writes books for kids, which is, so far they haven't been taken off of bookshelves.
Would you consider it down the line when your kids are maybe not so young?
Sure, because I think anyone who cares about our country needs to consider it. So
that's great.
No plans to, no ambition to, no sense that my life will be incomplete if I don't.
Would you like her to?
I want her to do what she wants, Sharon. I feel so strongly about that for every woman. And part of our real goal with doing Gutsy was to showcase so many different kinds of women, intergenerational women, younger than Chelsea, older than me, women who are
Kim Kardashian.
Kim, and what we wanted to do with Kim was to talk not about fashion and all the other stuff, but to talk about criminal justice and what she has done to try to help people who are incarcerated unfairly or too long. And I
find her to be a serious person.
Yes. In that conversation, it was wonderful because it was, we were able to talk about something that I care deeply about that she's been involved in, and others of those in the series who may not be certainly as well known, because hardly anybody is as well known as Kim. They in their own circles have an incredible following. People watch to see, okay, like the two women who lost their children to hate crimes, Susan and Dawn. I mean, they showed such grace and such strength that I hope that helps people who, under whatever circumstances, might have lost a child. So there's a lot that can be drawn out of it that is not like capital P political, but small p, like, Sharon Watts taking on the gun lobby.
Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon.
She's amazing.
Shannon Watts is amazing. And, part of it is we want to showcase that there are all these gutsy women doing great things that we all need to pay more attention to.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
How do you, how does it strike you? I see it all the time on social media. Of course, I have a very media heavy feed, but see it all the time. Hillary Clinton was right. Hillary Clinton was right. Why didn't we listen to her? Here's the clip of Hillary Clinton. Everything she said actually happened, and worse. How does that make you feel when you see that today?
Well, I mean, it is somewhat gratifying to see people recognizing that I was, warning everybody. Not sure I could have foreseen everything that happened, but course. I certainly never could have foreseen an attack on our Capitol, as we saw. But I was really worried about the demagoguery and the performance politics replacing, results-oriented politics. I was worried about the bullying and the kind of, nastiness that permeated that campaign.
You were worried about the white nationalism.
I was worried about the white nationalism, the alt-right, as it was called then. So yeah, I was, and it's not, I'm not doing this to say, oh, I told you so, but just, okay, everybody, pay attention, because the threat to our democracy is not over. There is a continuing threat, aided, abetted, and led by the same people who brought us the former president, who want to control, what we do and what decisions we can make, but also want to make sure they never lose a presidential election again. I beat him by more than, nearly 3 million votes in the election, but lost the Electoral College. Joe Biden beat him by more than 7 million votes and only won the Electoral College by 100,000 votes. So what the right is planning is to make sure they never lose the Electoral College, so that whoever they run could lose by 20 million, but can squeak out through voter obstruction and suppression, through, getting legislatures to count votes. Crazy, terrible outcomes for democracy. So I'm going to keep warning, because I see things now that are continuing to really worry me.
I thought of this, and I wanted to ask particularly Secretary Clinton, but if this applies to you, I'd ask as well. I failed at something big this year. And we all fail at things.
Yes.
And to me, I failed at many things. But I like mentoring people, and I tell young people in my company all the time that failure is part of the journey. I think sometimes it's helpful to share a failure, especially when you're a successful person. And I wondered if you might share something about a failure, and obviously, losing the presidential election is...
that was a pretty big failure. Yes.
But what did you learn from it? And how can you share anything from the experience of an important failure in your life?
Well, I will focus on losing the presidential election in 2016, because it felt like a very big failure, not just for me, but for the country. I didn't see it coming. I knew it would be close, because our elections are close, at least in the Electoral College, if not the popular vote. And I was devastated, really just laid flat with the prospect of what was going to happen to the country. And I put on, the best face I could when I made my concession speech, because that's what I believed. Okay, we have to give this, new president a chance. We have to unite the country and everything I had to say. And I also said something particular to young girls, don't give up on your dreams. Fighting for what's right is always worth it, whether you win or lose, because I think that's an important lesson. The next day, I got up and I went for a long walk in the woods, and it was just fortuitous that I met this young mother. She had a baby on her back and she had her dog on a leash. She saw me, she burst into tears. I was comforting her, and we took a selfie, which she then posted. And it really helped me a lot. It helped me that I wasn't alone in my grief and disappointment, that there were millions of Americans who felt the same way. And I was going to have to figure out how to both understand what happened, which is why I wrote a book called What Happened, but also to get back up and to continue to use my voice in any way that I could on behalf of those, 66 million people who voted for me, that we were going to hold this new president accountable. And I really did hope that he would turn out better than I had feared. And then I went to the inauguration and sat there and listened to the darkest, most dystopian inaugural address. No effort to bring the country together. Nothing about how we're all in this together. I'm going to be the president for all people. It was carnage in the streets. I was stunned at the, just mean-spiritedness of it. And then that very afternoon, they start saying, the crowd was huge. And I was there. I was looking at the crowd. It wasn't. And they were lying about that. So it was literally off to the races from that point on. And I felt a particular obligation to, speak up and do whatever I could to, try to help us plan and organize our way out of it.
Are you healed from that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Would I have liked to have been president? Yes. Do I think I could have done a better job by far than what we have seen? Absolutely. But I'm also really supportive of Joe Biden, who I think was the right person at the time to try to bind up the country's wounds after Trump. And I think he's gotten a lot done. But it's also an object lesson in this era of social media. People expect politicians to be performers, not performers in the way that I think matters, like help people with their health care, fight climate change, everything that, Biden is doing, but to be amusing and to get a lot of clicks and whatever. We've got to get over that, because we just opened the door to demagogues like what we had before, who know nothing, as we saw absolutely conclusively during COVID. So I think, I'm certainly oriented on the future. And this series that we did and highlighting the lives and stories of people that I want more Americans and frankly people around the world to know about, because we got to keep moving together. The threats are still there.
I want to give you the last word.
Jen, the only thing that I would like to compliment what my mom said with is just the kind of recognition that now most of us, fail at least somewhat in public. Maybe not at the kind of level of grand stage that, my mom or all of us who were part of that campaign and cared so deeply about winning, not only because we love my mom, maybe not no one as much as me, and believed that she would be, an extraordinarily good president. But because we knew also what was at stake for our country. And yet with the realities of social media and how especially young people often have, thousands of friends, maybe only a fraction of whom they know, in real life, all of us now lead somewhat public lives. And I think we have to find ways for those of us who do care about mentoring young people, whether kind of in our lives for personal reasons or in our kind of professional networks, to help young people navigate that and to still figure out how best to persevere for themselves and not for what their followers may think, not for what their friends of their friends of the friends of the friends might think. Because I do think that is a different dynamic about how to persevere through failure with integrity and authenticity that young people have to navigate in a way that like even I didn't, because I'm of a generation where I remember like when I first got an email account or a computer or a phone or a social media account. I am on Twitter. And so I think that's something that those of us who do care about mentoring young people, and particularly young women, have to be particularly attentive to. Because while we may think, oh, like, you know, TheWrap may not be covering like your failure, but their circles are going to know, probably.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck with Gutsy and anything else that you're going to be doing. And thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Good to see you again.